As we're starting this practice on our backs here with this complete breathing, to really just notice the back of the body, surrendering down into the ground. And then just notice what's present for you so you can set an intention for your practice today. So that might be something that is present in your mind, in your physical body, or in your heart space. And just direct your energy to move towards that which is important to you. And from this position, lying on your back, we'll gently draw your knees in towards your chest. And then you can give just a little rock from side to side if that feels okay on the low back, just to invite a little openness across the back. Yeah, and if you had some props, they might tip over, that's fine. And then rolling to one side or the other into that fetal position so that we can start to press up and come into tabletop. And if you've been using some props, you can just move those props off to the back side of the mat. I like to take my blanket and put it underneath my knees. So you could put that blanket underneath your knees if that's helpful. And then hands and knees, tabletop position. And just sort of noticing after you've been laying on your back a little bit, how the back of the body feels as you start to kind of reverse that position. So pressing into hands and knees, tops of the feet. And we'll come into cat and cow, exhaling, drop your chin, tuck your tail round through your back if that feels okay to you. And then inhaling, coming into gentle cow. So the belly can stay a little strong here, but we'll open the chest and the chin. Exhaling, tucking the chin, and inhaling, lengthening through the chest. And we'll just move a little bit more in tabletop. And if cat and cow isn't a great choice for you, know that you could always do some side bending. It would also be fine to shift your hips back towards your heels, keeping the back really long here as we move between tabletop and child's pose. So just some different options for how you might want to move. Maybe there's something else that comes to your mind and you can feel free to move in that way too. Good. Yeah, just checking in with your body. Taking one more breath before we come back together. Finding your way to tabletop position. Good. And then take your right leg and extend it out to the side. So it's coming out to the side of your mat with your toes pointed forward. And then plant your left hand down under your left shoulder and lift your right hand up towards the ceiling. And know that you could bring your right fingers to your right shoulder and bend the elbow if that feels better on your neck and shoulder. Good. Now we'll bend the right knee and lean a little bit towards that right heel. And then as you exhale, shift back again. So as we bend the knee, the arm lifts, maybe you even look up. And as you exhale, drop your arm down so that it comes to the ground or even over to the left thumb. So we've got a little motion here of waving, moving a little towards the right heel, if that feels okay, bending the knee, exhaling, bringing the hand back down, turning the chest to face the ground, straightening the leg. Good, yeah. And if for any reason that right foot a little bit further in front makes the hip feel better, you could feel free to do that too. Okay, we're just going to take one more time. This kind of wide open space here, opening into the hip. And then as we exhale, we'll bring everything down to the ground. Take the right leg, swing it around back behind you, cross it over to the left side and look over your left shoulder and see if you can find that foot back there. Give a big stretch through the right side of the body. Great, yeah. Take two more breaths here, dropping the right hip down. And then we'll inhale and bring the leg back into the center, lower to your forearms. Yeah, good. And then you might decide, this is perfect. I'm just going to be right here. I've got my right ball of my foot on the ground, my left knee's on the ground. I'll create a little bit of core strength this way. You might decide I want to create a little more core strength, and then you could lift the right leg up off the ground, so that you're creating a diagonal line between your right heel, your right hip, and your right shoulder. You might think I want even more core strength. And then I'm going to bend my right knee so that my right heel comes towards my head, and then inhale to straighten it back out. I'm going to take about 3 more breaths. So I could be bending the knee, bringing the heel towards me, and then inhale to straighten back out, or I could be in any of those other 2 positions too. Good. We'll bring ourselves all the way back down. Both knees are on the ground, and find a resting pose. And that might be just to fold the wrists on top of each other, put your forehead down on the wrist. That's relaxed puppy. It might feel fine to round the back, and then you can bring your hips down to your heels and find a variation of child's pose. So you decide what's going to feel best for you. You can notice the hip stretch is really different if the big toes are together touching and the knees spread wide. We'll get into the inner legs a little bit there. If my knees are close together, I'll feel a different stretch in that way. So you can find what's right for your body. Good. Yeah, and we're taking one more breath here. And we'll come back up and we'll find our way into tabletop position. Good, and we'll take the left leg, extend behind in your table, and then swing the left leg out to the left side and lift your left arm up. And you could have just that elbow up high instead of the hand up high. But we're just staying here for a moment, kind of standing down onto that hand. Good. And then on your exhale, bend the left knee and move your hips a little towards that left heel. I'm sorry, that's our inhale. And then exhale, come out of that untwist, lower the hand down or even over to the right hand. Inhale, we're twisting the body open, moving the hips over. Yeah, and that can be a pretty big stretch if the hips are feeling tight. So feel free to decide how much you want to move over towards that left heel, how much you want to be twisting in the upper body. One more time, inhaling to lift up when you exhale. Bring both hands down to the ground. Take the left leg, swing it around back behind you, crisscross over to the right side and look over the right shoulder, and then drop the left hip down a little bit. And take one more full breath here. And then returning back into the center, lower back down on your forearms one more time. And decide if you'd like to just hold right here in that single leg forearm plank, or if you'd like to lift your left foot up off the ground. And you can hold right there, belly button moving up towards the spine. Or you could decide to exhale and bend the left knee, bringing the heel towards your head, inhaling to straighten the leg again. We're trying to keep the knee facing that same direction. So if you are bending and straightening the leg, keep your left hip facing the ground. Good, yeah. So any variation there, we're taking one more breath. And then as we exhale, let's come to resting pose, either relaxed puppy or child's pose. See if you can take a deep, full breath, expanding the belly, the ribs, and the chest. And then exhaling, releasing the chest, ribs, and belly. Last breath here, we'll inhale, come forward to tabletop position. Tuck your toes under in that tabletop. And then as you exhale, lift your thighs towards your belly to crouching dog. So the knees are really bent and we're just working into the shoulders a little bit. And then as we inhale, we'll lower the knees back down again. Let the head come forward, look towards the thumbs. And as we exhale, we'll move back to crouching dog. So we're pulling the knees up towards the chest, bent. Great. And then inhaling, come back forward, lengthening the spine. And we're doing that 2 more times, exhaling, crouching dog. And then inhaling, lengthening back down with control. Good. Last time, crouching dog. And this time we'll turn it into downward dog. So step your feet back a few inches. You can feel free to straighten out the legs if that works for you. Know that we really want that long spine in down dog. So if bending the knees allows you to have that, great. Yeah, this looks great, everyone. I'm taking one more breath here. And then from that long position, we're going to come forward to a plank pose. So tuck your tailbone towards your heels if that works. Come forward into plank. You could lower your knees down here and have kneeling plank as well. And we're inhaling one more breath here. And then as we exhale, we'll lower all the way down to your belly. Elbows can come into your sides. Tops of the feet come down to the ground. Good. And then slide your hands back towards your rib cage. Inhale, low cobra. And as you push into the tops of the feet, see if you can lengthen through the spine even more so that you feel as though the only reason your chest and face are lifting up is because your spine is so long, it can't stand to be on the ground. Good. We're taking one more breath here. And then as you exhale, lower one cheek to the ground. See if you can relax the shoulder blades. And then go right back into it. Inhale, press into the legs, pull the tailbone towards the heels, lift. And exhale, lowering down, other cheek comes down to the ground. We're gonna go back and forth one more time here. Inhaling, lengthening to lift, exhaling, lowering down, relaxing the upper back. Last time, inhaling, lifting, and exhaling, lowering down. And then we'll inhale, find your way into your low cobra, slide your elbows forward, and then find Sphinx pose. Good. So I could widen out my Sphinx too, if you feel like you need less back bend. And then just notice your neck for a moment. So you might drop your chin down a little bit and lift it back up. See if you can find a position where you can press into the forearms and feel the chest broaden, the shoulder blades draw to each other. Good. And then the neck has lots of room to lift up and out in that Sphinx. And the legs are still active. So maybe Sphinx is a good place to be and you could stay right there. I'm gonna offer you a little more work if you want it. That you can exhale, drop your chin down, look at your belly button. As you lift the belly button away from the ground, your knees are on the ground and the elbows are on the ground and you're rounding the back a little bit to get some work. Inhaling, you lower the hips back down and come back into that Sphinx pose. So we exhale and round through the upper back, pull the belly button up towards the spine as you lift your hips off the ground, and then inhale, come back to Sphinx. So, and again, it would be fine to stay in Sphinx, or maybe you want to take one more time this variation. I call this a Sphinx sit-up because it's really abdominal muscles more than a push-up. And we'll inhale if you're in that Sphinx pose, or we'll meet you there. And then we'll exhale and lower down. Hands under the forehead, legs can come about as wide as your mat, crocodile pose. And just see how quickly you can come into a space where you're releasing the work. So especially the work in the glutes. Again, we're just kind of noticing if there's spaces that we're chronically holding or chronically tensing. And maybe take one more exhale to release any tension that's not needed. And we'll bring our hands back underneath our shoulders. We're going to come up into a lunging position. So tabletop, and then take your right leg and step it forward. And we'll come to lunge. So I'm going to put my blocks underneath my hands. My arms are a little short anyway, but it can be nice to use the blocks, especially because we're going to do a little twisting here too. So then we can make the twist nice and gentle. Yeah, so just checking out this. So each leg gets its own lane in our lunge, and then that right knee is going to be right over that ankle. So walk the right foot far enough forward that you can feel a stretch in the left hip flexor maybe. And then press the left hip forward. So instead of letting the hips splay out to the side, the left hip comes forward too. Good. And then as we exhale, we'll press the hips back, straighten through the right leg, and you can walk your blocks back with you. And as we inhale, we'll come back forward again, lunging on the right leg, maybe lifting up the chest a little bit for more stretch in that left hip flexor. And we're just going to move back and forth between those spaces. So if it's better for you to stay in one of those places for a few breaths, you could choose to stay. If that dynamic movement is kind of coaxing the body into a little bit of openness in spaces that are tighter, just continue with that dynamic movement, really concentrating on the breath guiding you. The exhale takes you back, straightening through the right leg any amount. The inhale brings you forward, maybe lifting the chest and brightening it as you lunge. Yeah, great. And next time you come into your lunge, we'll meet up there. So take your time. And as you find your lunge, left hand on the block or the floor, and then bring your right hand to your right knee. And as you press into both of your hands, lengthen your spine and turn your chest over to the right side. And you could always widen that right foot out a little bit more if you felt like you wanted a little more gentle twist too. Good. And then notice if you think about pushing your left sits bone forward, that left hip forward, then you might feel a little more stretch in that left hip flexor. And you could stay just like this, or you could take your right arm and wrap it behind your back for a little shoulder stretch, trying to open up through the chest a little bit more, maybe looking over towards the right, if that feels okay on your neck. Good. Think about that left knee grounding down as the left hip presses forward. The right lung takes a big breath in. And as we exhale, we'll untwist. And we're going to come into half split and stay there. So as you shift back, we'll straighten through the right leg. You could stay in kind of this half lift position, or you could drop your head down. Either way. And if for any reason that knee feels like it's got too much pressure on it, you could always come up into pyramid instead. You could pop up onto that left leg and then hang down over the top of that right leg. Good. Taking just one more breath here. And then shift forward onto the right foot, just enough to bring both hands on the inside of the right leg. I've got my hands on block still. And I'm going to swing my right leg all the way back behind me. Let my left toes come back behind me just a little bit. And then lift my right hand up to my right hip. And I'm coming into kneeling side plank. So several different options that you could do here. One would be to keep your hand on your hip and your foot on the ground and just ground down here. Another would be to lift your arm up towards the ceiling, which some of you are doing. You could also lift your right foot off the ground and take a half moon. Or if you're feeling really bold today, you can bend your right knee and try to grab a hold of your foot back behind you so that you're in a little bit of a half bow. So you decide what you want to do here. We're going to take a couple more breaths. If you're looking upward and your neck gets tired, just feel free to look straight ahead. We're taking one more breath, whichever variation you might be doing. And then as we exhale, we'll lower everything back down towards your mat, come back into tabletop position, and then decide what's right for your body. Do you want to move in tabletop a little bit here, cat and cow, or some spinal movement? You want to come to resting pose. If you want to lift to a down dog, you could come to down dog and stretch out your body that way. Maybe there's something else that your body is really calling you to do, and you could feel free to do that. We're going to take about 3 or 4 more breaths between sides. So if there's something else that your body wants you to be doing, just feel free. And take one more breath and then start that transition towards the left leg lunge, finding your way with that left leg coming forward. Yeah, great. And then the blocks can be underneath the hands if that works for you, whatever height. And then just make sure that the right hip is pressing forward here so that we're not pulling the hips away from each other, but we're really getting that stretch into the right hip flexor. Good. Let's start movement. As you exhale, shift the hips back. As you inhale, shift the hips forward, especially the right hip pressing forward. Maybe lift the chest a little bit. And that invitation to move that way with the breath. Exhale to shift back. Inhale to find the lunge. Or if you want to stay for a few breaths in one position or the other, feel free to make that your own. And just noticing each time you come to lunge, if you think about pressing that right hip forward a little bit more, it will engage the glutes on the right side and give you just a little bit more of a targeted stretch into the front of the right hip flexor. The more you pull that left hip back when you straighten through the left leg, the more intense the stretch will be there too. Good. Next time we come to lunge, we'll stay there in the lunge. And then we'll get to enjoy this for a moment here. So as we're putting our weight into the right hand, the left hand can come up just above the left knee, and you can always widen out that left foot a little bit if you need to. And then press into your hands so that the spine is really long as you turn and twist. The left shoulder blade is trying to stack on top of the right shoulder blade. Think about pushing the right hip forward as you pull the left hip back, getting whichever stretch is feeling right to you. And then you could take your left arm and wrap it around behind you if that feels like a nice way to add in a shoulder opening to the lunge. So yeah, just choosing what serves you best. Taking one more breath here. And then exhaling to come out of it. And we'll stay in half split for a moment. So as you shift back, finding the position that best serves you here. If I stay in that half lift and really pull my left hip back and crease in that left hip, I'm going to feel a really intense stretch across the back of the hamstring. I could also pop up and lift my back knee up if my back knee just feels really tired out. Yeah, great. We've got 2 more breaths here, noticing whatever sensations are occurring for you. Good. And then shifting into your lunge, putting both hands onto the inside of your left leg so that you can swing the left leg all the way around behind. Let your right toes come over to the right a little bit, maybe adjust that knee. We're standing onto the right hand so that the left hand can come up to the left hip. Yeah, kneeling side plank. Yeah, there you go. Yep, and then maybe I'll lift the hand up. Maybe I'll lift that leg up. Maybe I'll bend the left knee and try to grab a hold of the foot. Again, pressing the left hip forward for a little more stretch in the hip flexor. Good, and really noticing your next 2 breaths. Let them be full and complete. And on the next exhale, finishing up, bringing everything back down into your tabletop position. We're going to meet up in a resting pose, but we have about 4 or 5 breaths before then. So maybe you need a little bit of strength and resetting. You could step back into plank. You could come to downward dog. You might move about in your tabletop position, finding cat and cow or some side stretches. You might want to stretch out the wrists or the ankles. And you might just be ready for resting pose, and you could just settle into that at any point, bringing your forehead down to your hands or the floor. Good, yeah, and thank you for doing what it is that you need. We'll meet up in resting pose in about 2 more breaths. Good. I'm taking one more breath here, grounding down. Knowing at any point in the practice, if you're feeling too warm or you just need a grounding moment again, you can always return to the ground. Come back this way, but we're going to start to move towards a standing position. So you can come up into tabletop, and maybe you move that blanket out of the way if you've had it down. And then you can lift your hips up and find downward dog. Bending your knees, walking your feet forward towards your hands. And then touch the legs so that you might lengthen through the spine. Knees can be bent. And as you exhale, forward fold, and you could always put your forearms above the knees to help keep the back long here. Or you could hang down and grab the legs if that works for you. Good. And then we'll come into chair pose, hands just above the knees, drop the hips down, lift the chest. Exhale deep in your chair. Maybe the fingertips come forward or all the way over your head, or you could keep the hands on the knees. Inhale, stand tall, push into your feet and lift up. And then exhaling, bring the hands all the way down by your sides. Great. Good. So just as you're standing up, noticing when you're letting the weight of the body move down into the feet, if you have a tendency to stand on the balls of your feet, that will naturally clench the hip flexors a little bit. So see if you can shift your body so you're standing over your ankles, and then maybe even touch the hip flexors and just think about them softening as much as they can. There's going to be some need for them to hold us up, of course. But it's just if we have extra tension in there. You can notice that. Okay, so we're going to move the arms around. Inhale, raise the arms up. As you exhale, open the arms wide into the side. Good, and then inhale, repeat. This time, maybe a little back bend. Push the hips forward. You could touch the fingers together if that works. Exhale, forward fold. Bend your knees as you swan dive forward. Inhale, half lift and lengthen. And exhale, forward fold. Then inhale, chair pose. And then as you come to chair pose, we'll pause. Exhale to deepen your chair. Take your right hand to your right hip. Pull the right hip back a little bit. And then take your left hand down to your left knee. So this would be good gentle twist. If you want a little deeper twist, you can place the left hand across. Or you could even bend down so that your left elbow comes just above the left knee. And then again, that option to wrap your right arm behind your back if you find that that's a nice thing. So any of those variations, we're going to stay for one more breath, and we'll feel that that right hip pulls back so the twist starts all the way down in the pelvis. Take last breath here. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, half lift, lengthen through the legs. Exhale, forward fold. Good, inhale, chair pose. And as we lift up into chair pose, pause for a second. We're going to take the twist on the opposite side. Left thumb comes back. Pull the left hip back a little bit. It could stay just like that, or I could bring the hand across, or I could bend my elbow, lower the right elbow down above the knee, maybe wrap the arm behind. We're drawing that attention and energy into the center, maybe giving a little stretch in the hip. We'll take last breath here. Exhale, forward fold, drop down. Good, inhale, half lift and lengthen. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, chair pose. We're coming back up to stand. So as you exhale and deepen your chair, be ready to spring upward. Inhale to lift up, maybe lift the chin, a little back bend. Exhale, hands down by your sides. Great, good. Inhale, raise the arms. Exhale, open the arms wide. Good, inhale, lift the arms, maybe lift the chin, a little back bend if that works. Exhale, forward fold, push the hips back, lengthen the spine as you fold down. Inhale, half lift and lengthen. Okay, now this time it's a little different. As you exhale, bring your forearms down just above the knees. Widen out your feet so they're about as wide as your mat. And then straighten through the right leg and bring your right hand to your right hip. So if that feels like too much, I could always bring my left hand up onto the left knee and come out of this a little bit. Good. And if you feel like you want more, you can slide your left elbow down the inside of the left leg and take a deeper twist and forward fold and let the head hang down. So the left elbow might be pushing onto the inside of the calf muscle on that left side if you're forward folding. So I could be in that forward fold. I could have the left elbow up above the knee, or I could even have the left hand above the knee. So I'm just pressing into the right hip, just one more breath. And then exhaling to come out of it, finding center. Inhale, half lift, lengthen through your spine. And then we'll exhale and go to the opposite side. So as we come down, we'll find the forearms above the knees, bend the knees, bring your left hand back to your left hip, pull the left hip back as you straighten through the left leg. And then you could stay in that twist there. I could come up to the hand, or you could forward fold that, deepening the twist, compressing into the right side, and then letting the head hang down. Good, yeah. Whichever variation you're in, take one more breath. And then exhaling, coming back out into the center. Inhale, push against the legs, half lift and lengthen. Exhale, forward fold, toe heel your feet back to about hip distance. Chair pose as you stand up. You could support yourself above the knees or bring the hands to those other positions. Exhale, deepen your chair, spring upward. Inhale, lifting up. And exhale, hands coming down by your sides. Good. Inhale, lift your shoulders up. Exhale, let them drop. Great. We're going to take a dancer balance. So you might want to do this at the wall. And if you do it at the wall, you could just put your fingers at the wall. There's plenty of space here. You could do it at the door too. So I could put my fingers on the wall, or I could bring my hands to heart center. I like to just keep that hand right at heart center if I'm not touching the wall. So either way, either left hand on the wall with the fingertips on the wall, or I can bring the hands to heart center and then I'll take my right hand away. Shifting over onto my left foot, I'm going to bend my right knee and see if I can grab a hold of my ankle. And if I can't grab my ankle, it's okay to step the foot back behind me, and I can take a hip flexor stretch here with the foot on the ground too. So if it doesn't feel right in the knee. Good. So if you have the foot in the hand, think about dropping the right knee away from the right shoulder so that there's as much length through the front of the body as possible. And then if you'd like, you can push your foot into your hand and reach the left hand forward, or if the left fingers are on the wall, push into that wall so that the chest stays lifting as you come into a back bend. Good. And again, the right hip is facing forward. And we're just taking whatever amount of back bend's right for you. Know that you could always stay in that modified dancer too. Taking one more breath, and then we'll find our way back down onto the ground, standing on both feet, giving everything a little shake and a wiggle. And inhale, stretch the arms out to the sides. As you exhale, put your right arm on top when you hug. You could bend your knees and round your back if that feels okay to you. On your inhale, stand back tall again, open the arms wide, maybe look up, and exhale out your mouth, drop your arms. Good. And we'll go to the opposite side. So maybe right fingers are on the wall and the chest is lifted up, or maybe hands are at heart center. And then you can take the left hand away. Shift onto your right foot, standing really tall through that right hip flexor, bending and grabbing a hold of the left foot if that works. And know that you could always have that foot down at any point too. Yeah, great. So this right hand is pushing against my imaginary center line. And then I'm going to think about the inside of my left knee also staying connected to that center line as it slides back if I'm moving into that back bending dancer. So I can slide my right hand forward and my left knee back as I'm pushing my foot into my hand and taking whatever variation of back bend serves you. And we're going to take one or two more breaths if it works for you, filling the lungs. And then exhaling to find your way back down onto your feet. Good. Inhale, open the arms wide. The left arm comes on top for a hug, maybe a little roundness through your back. Inhale, lifting and opening. Exhale out your mouth, drop the arms. Great. We'll face the long edge of our mat towards the studio door. Step your feet wide, and then actually bring a block over and put the block at that highest height. Good. So the toes are pointing towards that long edge of the mat, and we'll open into star pose. We can lift the arms up if that works. Palms facing up, pressing into the feet, just making a big X with your body. We're going to take one more breath here. As you exhale, bring your right hand down to your block as you bend your left knee. And that left arm can stay up towards the ceiling, and then reach up through the left arm to pull you back up and find star pose again. So we're exhaling, go the other way. The left hand comes down as the right knee bends. And then inhale, reach up through the right arm to pull you back up and find star. Good, we're gonna move back and forth that way. And if you need to, you could always touch the opposite leg if reaching all the way down to the block is too big of a movement. That would be fine too. Exhaling, twisting across, and inhale to come back. Great. Good, we're gonna go one more time on each side. You follow your breath, just moving gently in and out of star. Noticing the inner legs as we move in and out of that lunge. Great, and when we come back up to star, we'll pause there. Palms face up, maybe lift the chin a little bit as though your head is that olive in the bottom of the martini glass. Just let it relax there. Let the glass get a little bigger, taller. One more breath. And then exhaling, bringing the hands down by your sides. Good, you can interlace your hands behind your back if that works, or you could just grab onto your pants and have the elbows be pointed backwards. As we bend the knees and shift the hips back, we'll fold forward. I'm gonna move my block out of the way so my head doesn't hit it. I could lift my hands up as I do that to tip forward and get a shoulder stretch. If that doesn't feel quite right, again, I could grab onto my pants, or I could always bring my forearms forward and support myself above my knees if that feels better for my back. Yeah, and if it's possible to let the head go, you'd be hanging forward with the head completely relaxed, like it's a ripe fruit about to fall off of the tree. Take one more breath. And then releasing the arms, we'll bring our hands to the knees. Help yourself up to like a halfway position here. So my shoulders are in front of the hips. I'm kind of in that chair shape. and my hands are above the knees. I'm going to turn my toes out, maybe pointing towards the corners of the mat, maybe not that far. Inhale, lengthen through the spine. Exhale, twist to the left so that the right shoulder comes towards the left knee. Inhale back into the middle, and then exhale, take temple twist the opposite direction. And we'll do it one more time on each side, inhaling through the middle, getting into the inner leg just a little bit as you push that leg away. Great, and then we'll inhale, come back into the center, press into your legs and stand all the way back up into star. You can turn the toes back forward towards the long edge of the mat. Pausing in your star pose, just noticing how much space you can take up. You take one more breath here. And then we'll exhale and bring the hands down to the hips. Step all the way back forward up to the top of your mat and just find yourself in your mountain pose. And then just noticing your body, if there's spaces that feel activated or spaces that feel a little stuck or tense. I'm just taking one more breath here in mountain. Great, and we'll slide the hands down the legs. We're gonna come all the way down onto your belly. So maybe you wanna step back into downward dog to get there, and then shift forward into plank at the top of a push-up, and breathe your air out as you lower all the way down to your belly. Maybe you have a different way you wanna get in your belly, and that would be fine. Good. So now that you're here on your belly, we'll stretch the arms out like a T. And we're going to take the right hand and bend the elbow again and bring it back underneath and roll over onto the left side. So as I do that, I've got my left arm pinned back behind me. My left side of my head is on the ground. I could put a blanket under my head if it feels really uncomfortable. And then try to find what would be sort of a long straight line lying on your side. Good. And then from here, keep your right knee close to the left knee, but bend your right knee so that the inside edge of the ball of the right foot can touch the ground back behind. And you might find that this gives you a stretch. You could stay right here, or you might slide the right foot back behind you a little bit to give more stretch along the hip flexor. And again, the inside edge of my right foot's on the ground, and my right knee is close to the ground as well. Good, and if you feel like you want even more stretch, then you can bend your right knee and try to grab a hold of your right foot and take a single leg side lying bow where I push my right foot into my hand and try to open up into that space a little bit more. Yeah, and we're trying to keep the right hip stacked right on top of the left. It's a little bit of an awkward position, but just a different way to get into that hip flexor. We're taking one more breath. And then as you're exhaling, we'll return back to the middle and pause for just a moment in crocodile. So let the legs come out as wide as your mat. Let your forehead rest on your hands. And just notice one side of the body and the other. And then notice if there's anything that you need to think about for this next side as we move into the next side. And you might step the feet together, put the arms out into a T shape to prepare that right arm, and then roll over onto the right shoulder, stacking the body up into that side lying position. Keep the left knee close to the right and bend the left knee, and the inside edge of the left foot will come onto the ground, and that might be a stretch for you. You might stay here in balance, or you might want to take the left foot in the left hand. And again, we're trying to keep the left knee close to the right knee so that the hips are both facing towards that left side rather than having like rolling onto your back. And just seeing if you can breathe into the front of that left hip flexor, breathe into the right side of the chest, the right armpit. Yeah, notice the bound up nature of this pose. Take one more breath here. And then we'll release and we'll come back into that crocodile pose, rolling back onto your belly, Maybe resting the opposite hand on top. And with the feet still on the ground, you can just wiggle the heels from side to side just to give the low back a little bit of a release if you'd like. And we're going to take one final belly back bend. I'm going to give you a bunch of different options for what might be best for your body. So we'll bring the hands and know that one choice might be just resting. You might stay in crocodile. We're going to meet back up in crocodile when we're done. You might start off with low cobra, pressing the tops of the feet into the ground, bring the hands underneath the shoulders, and then lift up to low cobra. If you want a little more, you could lift your feet off the ground and then bring your hands back towards your feet with the palms facing the legs for Shalabhasana. So you could fly right here. This is a great place to be, where you could bend your knees and try to grab a hold of your feet for bow pose, pushing the feet into the hands and then lifting the knees up. So whichever variation you're in, we're trying to make the front of the body really long by using the muscles on the back of the body, squeezing the shoulder blades together to broaden the chest, keeping the legs really active to open the front of the hips. And we're taking last breath, whichever variation you're in, and we'll exhale and lower down to crocodile one more time. And this time, if you'd like, you could bend your knees so your feet are up towards the ceiling and just really gently, slowly move your feet from side to side. Again, just to give the back a little break and massage here. Good, and then you can lower the feet back down. And we'll take 5 breaths in crocodile. You might just notice your exhale in your crocodile. See if you can release the weight of the body, the work of the back of the body, fully on your exhale. Taking one more breath here. We're going to roll over onto our back. We'll do a little bit of a bridge series. So if you wouldn't mind having one block on each side of you so that they're kind of near your hips and you can grab them with your hands. And you could lie down with your head towards me if that works. And then we'll find our bridge prep position where the knees are bent and the feet are on the ground. Good. And then maybe the first thing you do when you get here is just wobble the knees a little from side to side, just to give yourself, again, that kind of gentle rocking in the low back and the hips, just gently. Good. And then we'll settle into the middle and notice your feet so that your feet are close enough to your hips where you can press into the full foot and feel a little activation happening all along the back of the legs. And then bend your elbows so that your upper arms can press into the ground. Your fingertips can point up towards the ceiling. And you can walk your upper arms right along your rib cage so that when you press into your upper arms, it opens your chest. So now we'll press into the feet and press into the upper arms and make sure that you can press into the back of the head so that the curve in the neck stays stable as we start to bridge. And as we press down through the feet and the arms and the head, we'll lift the hips up any amount. And as we exhale, we'll lower the hips right back down again. And we're just going to do that 3 times for stabilization. Press into the ground, lift the hips on your inhale. As you exhale, lower the hips back down. And then one more time, inhale, press into your feet, arms, and head, and lift the hips. And exhale, lower back down. Now we're going to make it a little more complicated. Inhaling with your hips on the ground. Exhale, tuck your tailbone towards your knees and flatten your low back to the ground if that's okay to round the back. Inhale, lift your hips up into bridge pose. And then exhale, lower down 1 vertebrae at a time, rolling the spine out. So the last thing that comes down is the tailbone. Inhale with the length in the spine, hips on the ground. Exhale, pelvic tilt, contract your abdominal muscles, low back flattens out. Inhale, press into your arms, feet, and head to lift the hips up, bridge pose. And then exhale, slowly lowering down. And that exhale might be longer than the other parts of the breath as you take your time and lower down. We're going to do that one more time. Inhale to prepare, exhale, pelvic tilts, abdominal contraction, flatten the low back to the ground. Inhale, lift the hips up, pressing into the arms to keep the chest broad. Exhale, lowering down one vertebrae at a time. Okay, now this time we'll go up and stay in bridge. And no, you could do any of those dynamic movements again if that's better for you. Otherwise, we'll lift the hips up into bridge. I could keep my elbows bent, my fingertips pointing up towards the ceiling, or I could bring my hands underneath me and walk my arms underneath me to broaden my chest even more. I just want to keep pressing into my feet and my head so that as I'm here in this bridge pose, I still have a natural curve in my neck and a lot of activation in the feet to help support the low back. And we're taking 2 more breaths in bridge pose. You can always come down a little earlier if you need to. You might lift the hips just a little higher. Last inhale. And as we exhale, we'll lower down one vertebrae at a time. Walk the shoulders out from underneath if you've brought the hands underneath. Great. And then grab those blocks that are right next to you. Put the bottoms of your feet together with the knees bent, and then drop the legs open into half or into butterfly. So I'm going to use those blocks to support my legs. You could put them at the lowest height, or I like to put them so that the sharp edge of the block is on the ground and the flat edge of the block is on my legs. We won't be here for a super long time, but just long enough to allow those muscles that were really working hard in the center of the body to have a chance now to open. And your hands could be on your hips if that feels good. You could also stretch the arms out to the side or even over your head just to give a little more psoas stretch, a little more stretch into the torso. And then noticing as you're here, how each breath, everything unwinds just a little bit more. So it might feel like things are relaxed, but each exhale, there's just a little more that lets go. Those muscles that are kind of all braided together, especially around the hip flexors. Each exhale, there's just a little more release and softening. And as we're staying for just a few more breaths, you might bring in just a steady, even breath, inhaling, filling the belly, the ribs, and the chest. Exhaling to empty the chest, the ribs, and the belly. Just noticing that complete breath and how it feels in your torso. All right, and we'll transition out of this. So if you've got those blocks, so you can reach down and grab your legs and actually just help the legs back together. We'll keep the blocks in this position. Widen your feet out as wide as your yoga mat with the knees still bent. And then drop your knees over to the left. And if you'd like, you could put the blocks underneath your legs to help support the legs here. So we're in kind of a snowflake twist. Sometimes this is called windshield wiper twist. The right knee would be right in a line with the right hip, a 90-degree bend in that right knee, just so that I'm not putting too much pressure onto the knee. And again, I could use those blocks to help support if it feels like that's too much rotation for the knee. And then again, the hands might be on the hip flexors. They might be extended to the side or even up over your head if it feels good to add that uplift in the torso. And then as we're just noticing what's able to open and soften here, you could gently roll your head from side to side, noticing that connection between the muscles of the hips and the jaw. See if you can soften the jaw, maybe even open and close the mouth a little bit. Trying to allow the muscles of the pelvis and the hip flexors to soften into this stretch in whatever way might be possible. And then we'll bring the head back into neutral. If the arms are lifted, you can bring them down by the side so that when you lift the knees up, the core can help you a little bit. And we're going to the opposite side. So I have to move my blocks around with my feet a little bit. And then when I drop my knees over to the right, I can put those blocks underneath if I need them. It might feel fine to not have blocks under the legs too. And then the left knee, we're trying to have that left knee in line with the left hip if possible, a 90-degree bend in that left knee. You could flex your ankles and toes even to help protect the knee a little more. We're taking this open twist with the knees dropping over to the right. One side might be really different than the other. You might want the arms to the side or up over your head to accentuate it. And then again, just maybe a little rolling of the head side to side. Help see if we can release and soften in any way into those hip flexors. And the softer the jaw and the mouth get, the easier it can be to release the muscles of the pelvis. Great. And then we'll help the knees back up, working your way back into the center, bring the feet back to hip distance. And if you feel like you need just something to restabilize before Shavasana, especially if you have any low back issues, you might put your block between your knees at that medium size and just take a moment to squeeze the block with the inside edges of the knees so that we're reestablishing that stabilization that's needed to hold things together in the pelvis and the low back. And if you don't need that and you're ready to move towards Shavasana, we can pull the knees into the chest and take that final folding position to close the practice and then set up for Shavasana. So it might be nice to roll to your side so that you can just set up whatever you might need. If you need some props, you might have a bolster. So you could put that bolster underneath your knees. You could set up that Stonehenge with the two blocks under the bolster. Or I sometimes just put one block at that lowest height under the bolster. And then it gives me a little bit of a lower Stonehenge with my feet angled downward. It might feel really comfortable for you just to stretch out on your back. And you could certainly do that. And then if there's anything that you're needing, if there's a prop you don't have, you can give me a wave if you're in the studio and I'll come over and help you find it. I'm just going to turn the fan off. And just really noticing if there's anything you can do to be even 5% more comfortable, just giving yourself that gift. And then you might bring your hands to the front of your hips and just one more time notice the hip flexors. That space all along the front of the hip joint. And see if you can identify with your exhale. Become part of the exhale as the exhale leaves the body and allow tension to release. And maybe it's in your hip flexors or maybe it's somewhere different. Each time your body is exhaling, it's carrying away tension, letting it fall down into the ground. Sensing that support underneath your body. That's allowing you to release and relax the front of the body. Just allowing your breath to come and go without your control, but you can notice your breath as it comes in and goes out, if that's helpful for you. Just notice that sensation of rising and falling in the torso. And maybe you're identifying with that exhale as a chance to release tension. I'll name some parts of the body and you can bring awareness there to help invite softening and relaxation. You can also ignore my words if that's more helpful for you. But maybe you bring awareness to the low belly. Just noticing any sensations in your low belly. And bring awareness to the right hip joint, where the leg meets the pelvis. And move awareness down the right leg to the right knee, the right ankle, and the tips of the toes on the right foot. See if you can bring awareness to the entire right leg, connecting it all the way up to the belly muscles from the toes. Bringing awareness to your low belly and awareness in the left hip joint. And down the left leg to the left knee, the ankle, the tips of the toes. And then see if it's possible to bring awareness to the entire left leg from the toes all the way up past the hip into the low belly. And then you might imagine as if you had on a pair of pants with socks on the bottom, from your feet up the legs all the way to your waist. Noticing the stability of your legs and hips. You can choose the color of pants that you're wearing in your mind. And try to really bring that color to that whole area, from the low belly through the legs down to the feet. Coloring in the lower body with your awareness. Pausing in that open awareness of the lower body and noticing if there's any messages or any sensations or anything that your lower body wants you to know about. See if you can accept that with compassion as we begin to reawaken the body with a little bit of wiggling of the toes, a deepening of the breath. Then you can start to bring bigger movements as you're ready. And eventually we'll roll over onto your side so you can start to get settled back towards a seated position.